A few weeks ago, I did a video talking about the prospect of Zack Snyder returning to the DCU, and that idea came from the fact that Zack Snyder has a good working relationship with Netflix. Netflix was one of the companies interested in buying Warner Brothers Discovery, who owns the DCU, and because of that, then it's possible that they might put Zack Snyder in charge instead of James Gunn. Now, that was highly speculative, and I even said at the time these were rumors, but one thing looks like it is for certain, and that is Warner Bros. Discovery would ultimately be sold to another company. And because of James Gunn's track record with the DCU in its current state, it's possible that they might be looking to replace him after all. But before we really dive into this, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you can, leave a comment and hit the like button too, because it helps me out. Rumor James Gunn could be fired from DC Studios if Paramount sales goes through. This is coming from That Park Place. And I just want to emphasize that these are rumors. We don't have any confirmation one way or the other. Of course, they're not going to confirm one way or the other before the sale has even gone through if James Gunn is still going to have a job with the company. This will be something that you hear after the fact. So right now, because there's no confirmation of it, we just have to treat it as rumors. But if you look at like I said, with the current track record of the DCU under James Gunn, I want to put it past any new owners to look to get rid of him and try something new, because from what he's done so far, it really hasn't worked out for them. Rumors are swirling once again around DC Studios, and this time they point directly at co-CEO James Gunn. Matt McGloin of Cosmic Book News published a story alleging that Gunn could be fired if Warner Brothers Discovery is sold to Paramount Global and its Skydance media partners. And I think that is a strong possibility that it could be fired, but I think that's always going to be a possibility. Whenever you have new ownership, they might be looking to change out the current leadership at the company in order to put their own people in there, or they might just, for continuity's sake, just keep the existing leadership there. So it's not really much of a stretch to speculate whether or not James Gunn will continue to work for DC if Paramount does ultimately buy them out. At this stage, the story remains unconfirmed by any major trade outlet, but Cosmic Book News has a history of breaking scoops ahead of Hollywood press, so fans are paying close attention. And like I was saying, it's reasonable to assume that James Gunn's job at DC could be on the chopping block. McGloin's article titled James Gunn Out at DC with Warner Brothers Sale Exclusive asserts that if the long-rumored Warner Brothers Paramount merger goes through, Gunn's time at DC Studios would come to an end. He writes that Gunn supposedly knows his days are limited and is getting himself, his friends, and his wife big paychecks before Warner Brothers Discovery sells. Now, that's just something James Gunn would have done regardless of any of this internal politics at the company. So I don't think that's necessarily indicative that he is expecting to lose his job. But for James Gunn, the possibility that he will be out when there's new ownership at the company is probably on his mind, especially since his contract, I believe, is only good through next year. So they could just simply choose not to renew his contract and then either continue with what he started with the current DCU, or just look to scrap it and start something new, or maybe just get rid of the whole shared universe entirely and just kind of treat all their projects as one-off movies. I mean, that's something I think they should probably be doing to begin with, because right now, the whole shared universe thing has kind of run its course. We've seen that with Marvel, where they're kind of dwindling down. I'm not saying they can never have any crossovers or anything like that, but they should stop treating these franchises like their only purpose is to set up the sequels and basically to build a shared universe, as opposed to just treating them like one-off movies that may actually have some crossover down the road if that's something audiences want. The rumor continues. Skydance chief David Ellison would appoint current Warner Brothers film chief Mike DeLuca to rebuild DC under new management. McGloin points to mixed reactions towards Superman, Peacemaker Season 2, and Creature Commandos, which you may have forgotten existed, as evidence that executives might already want a clean slate. And I just want to talk about these projects because these are the only real projects that the DCU has under James Gunn. Now, Superman, that one was, the reception to it was mediocre, but mediocre leaning towards the positive side. But when you look at the box office results, the movie still failed to make money at the box office. And I'll get more on that in a little bit. Peacemaker Season 2, that's more of on the front of everyone's mind because it just ended and the reaction to it wasn't really that good. The viewership for it was kind of low. Now, some people have tried to defend this by saying The viewership for the premiere episode was up from the viewership of the premiere episode of the first season, but still both seasons failed to chart on Nielsen for the original during the time period that it was coming out, which indicates that even though some people who watched it may have enjoyed it, it wasn't enough to bring in a big portion of the audience, at least not a significant amount of the audience, because it failed to chart. And even then, for season 2, a lot of people had a negative reaction to the season finale of that one. And it's just looks like that's kind of what we can expect from James Gunn stuff. Now, I'm going to defend him for a little bit because I do like a lot of the earlier stuff that James Gunn had. I think Slither is probably his best movie out there, which is a deviation from a lot of his more recent stuff. But I just don't think the guy necessarily has the talent to run a studio like he does, or like he's doing right now. I think he has a talent of basically managing movies like Guardians of the Galaxy, where you just have a team of misfit characters. I think he can handle something like that reasonably well. The problem is he's trying to do that with other stuff too, and it just doesn't work out to the betterment of it. Like Superman, I think, is a good example of him just not being the right guy for the job for a movie like Superman. And that's probably the reason why a lot of people who watched it just had like a meh reaction at best. I think he would be better suited for other projects, and definitely better suited not being the one in charge of the company or one in charge of the whole franchise, because that's a completely different job than what he's normally used to. He's never really ran studios like this, and it's another talent, and I just don't think he's up for the job right now. Gunn and Peter Safran were hired as co-CEOs of DC Studios in late 2022 on a multi-year contract that runs through 26. So like I was saying, his contract is up next year, so it's possible if the deal goes through and everything like that, they just decide like, yeah, we're just not going to renew your contract. Could that be considered them firing him? Perhaps you can look at it that way, but I mean, that doesn't seem to be that unusual unless they really liked what he's done in the past with DC, or they like his vision for the future of DC. Then they might keep him on board, maybe not have him at the co-CEO role. He can have some other type of role where he manages, like maybe like a chief creative officer or something to that extent, but maybe not like actually have the control that he does have, because I think that's something James Gunn negotiated into his contract when he came on board to begin with, because he saw what they did with Zack Snyder. He was kind of quarterbacking the whole universe, and the studio was interfering with it. And James Gunn probably saw them and be like, yeah, I don't want that to happen to me, so I'm going to make sure I have creative control over what's going on. And maybe the studio executives, after they see the reaction to his stuff that he's produced so far, like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't give you full control. Maybe we should have some oversight, because you're not really the one to manage a franchise like this. They currently report to David Zaslav, CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery. M&A talks between Warner Brothers Discovery and Paramount have indeed been reported by outlets like Bloomberg and Deadline, but all descriptions emphasize that negotiations are preliminary and face significant regulatory hurdles. Superman earned roughly $616 million worldwide on a $225 million budget, falling around $40 million short of profitability in its theatrical run. Bloomberg has reported that Warner Brothers has rebuffed Paramount's initial offer to buy the company. And even if Paramount isn't the one who buys the company, whoever buys the company, whenever someone does buy the company, the same discussion will be had whether or not they're going to keep the current leadership at DC in place, or whether they're going to replace them with their own people, or just maybe just reduce the role that they have, or, like I said, just continue with how things are because they enjoyed how things are. Now, they lost around $40 million on Superman because the budget was $225 million. If you've watched my channel for any length of time, you would know I seriously doubt that was the actual budget of the movie. There's been evidence to suggest it was significantly higher. This $225 million figure is basically what they said, and James Gunn has all the incentive in the world to try to tone down how much they actually spent on the movie, not be honest about it. And let's face it, James Gunn has a track record of just blatantly lying about stuff like this. So I don't necessarily trust that it's $225 million. Maybe it's not the $350 million or around that's also being reported, but I think it is higher than what it is. That means the money that they actually lost on Superman could be significantly higher than this $40 million that's being speculated right now. It's not unusual for new corporate owners to shake up leadership, particularly in Hollywood, where branding and creative direction carry enormous value. If Paramount and Skydance did acquire Warner Brothers Discovery, they'd almost certainly evaluate every decision, including DC Studios. Yeah, so I think that's completely reasonable. And the article just kind of ends by emphasizing it's still just a rumor. We don't know one way or the other. But we do know that Warner Brothers is being, or at least companies are looking to buy Warner Brothers Discovery, which would include DC. So if they do buy it, do you really think it's reasonable that they would keep James Gunn on board? Did they look at what he's done so far and be like, yeah, we want more of that? Or are they going to be like, yeah, maybe he's just in over his head. It's not worth it to keep him on board. So maybe we could just get rid of him and try something else. And do you think that that possibility could be Zack Snyder and maybe just allowed him to have more creative freedom in it? Or just try someone new entirely? But let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest entertainment news. And don't forget to hit the like button and share the video out there because it helps out with the channel. Thank you.